Hello, Paul.
Hello, Bob. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Paul. Let me introduce you. I'm Robert Wright, publisher of the Non-Zero Newsletter. This is a Non-Zero podcast. You are Paul Bloom, famous psychologist, prolific writer, productivity guru, and publisher of the Small Potatoes newsletter on Substack. Paul, I'd like to start today with some bad news for you.
Go ahead.
You ready for this?
I'm ready.
I discovered this morning that your newsletter on Substack, Small Potatoes, is not the only newsletter on Substack called Small Potatoes. Did you know that?
I did know that. I think I noticed that at some point.
Yeah, but do you realize you're up against a rabbi here? The other one is run by rabbi. God is not on your side.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how God fares in this one. This is nothing. This is nothing less than the battle of good and evil.
I'm just gonna spend the year. I'm just gonna get like a huge thing of popcorn and watch you and this rabbi duke it out for the Small Potatoes crown. I'm looking forward to this. You do have more readers than she has, but she has God on her side.
Maybe we could join forces. Just have Small Potatoes combine the podcast.
See, that's a very Paul-esque thing to say.
I would have thought it's a very non-zero thing to say.
What's that?
It's a very non-zero thing to say.
Right. You would think the person who wrote that book would say that kind of thing, but I'm like more inclined to hire a hitman and stuff like that.
So I have two questions, a comment and a question about your podcast.
Uh-huh.
The question is, who's the voice that begins it now? This is the female voice introduced your podcast.
That is the fiance/wife. The youngsters today have so many ambiguities in their, gender-related categories. That is a fiance/wife of, am I authorized to disclose that? Let's just say for someone who works on a podcast.
Okay.
And is also the graphics czar for the newsletter.
Well, it's a very nice voice, very authoritative.
We screened, thousands of voices.
I could imagine the casting calls of these people lined up.
No, her relationship with the guy who works with me is a coincidence. We screened thousands. So
and the second thing I want to say about your podcast was I listened to your discussion with Russ Roberts, and I thought it was excellent.
I'm glad you say that because I took a little heat that I won't elaborate on over that. But yeah, Russ Roberts.
Heat from the left? Like, why'd you talk to that guy?
No, heat from the pro-Israel right. Russ Roberts has this well-known podcast called Econ Talk, and he's had it for a long time, and he was kind enough to have me on it once. And he's now president of a small college in Jerusalem, and so has lived in Israel for a couple of years. And we talked about kind of the view from Israel. But thank you. That means a lot.
It was very, you guys talked at length, presented different positions. And
yeah,
it was good.
Yeah, thank you. So how are things in Canada? What? Is nothing going on?
No. There's things. A typical Canadian headline is, how did Canadian newspapers cover the resignation of Harvard's president?
That's a question. What is the answer to that question?
I didn't click it, but we live in the shadow of the United States. It's every third article is about Nikki Haley.
So what's the Canadian view on the conspiracy to have the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl so that Taylor Swift can help Joe Biden stay in the White House?
I think many of this things think that it's not a real conspiracy. There has to be a word for this sort of something where you attribute to the other side an insane view that only like a tiny portion of people have it, and then you mock it mercilessly.
Oh, well, that's like the modern world. We should just call that social media. How's that for their
social media is a good word for that.
No, that really is the plague of our time. I mean, it really is. And you see it in all kinds of things.
Did you hear, this is a non-conspiratorial music connection, did you hear Tracy Chapman on the Grammys?
I can't get that song out of my head. I watched that like 8 times, Fast Car.
Yeah.
I was only kind of vaguely aware of it. Here's this thing. Well, go ahead and say your thing.
So I like Tracy Chapman for a long time. I'm not amused. I'm not a fan of
Yeah.
anybody in particular. I just would always, it's on my Spotify list. I always get Alexa to play her, and
Uh-huh.
I love the song. And Fast Car's great. And then apparently the story goes, some country western guy covered it, won a lot of awards.
Luke something.
Yeah, that would work just as well. Even if the name isn't Luke, it could be Luke.
I think it is. I mean, he sang it with her. He's the guy who sang it with her on stage at the Grammys. Yeah.
And then somebody, and again, this falls under what you're calling social media. Somebody held a view that nobody really holds, which is that guy is an asshole because he's stealing from the work of a Black woman who didn't get enough credit and so on. And so he's in some way a horrible person. Tracy Chapman's response was to be tremendously excited that the song from way, way back is getting so much play now, presumably getting a lot of money for it, and then gets invited to do a duet with the guy in the Grammys. And watching her do it, this was beautiful. And she's in her late 50s.
She's 59, and she looks like,
is indistinguishable, and she looks like 40 or whatever. And the voice is, and I am not a sort of cheer up kind of guy, and I'm looking at my phone while some other TV shows play in the background, and I just
it was a great thing. And here's the funny thing: is like I was in Denver months ago, and I was staying at my brother's house, and all day in their house, and hey, it's their call, but all day in their house, Alexa plays some country western like streaming station thing. Yeah. And I heard that song a couple of times, and I had only been vaguely aware of it. It rang a bell. I had heard it before. I liked it, and I thought, good sound. This is a country western version. I had no idea what was going on. But yeah, that was Luke Combs having turned it into a hit second time. And now she apparently got some kind of country western music award already for his version because she wrote it. But now it was a country western song, and so she got that. But it really is. And so I had never, looked at the lyrics, but I looked at them. It's a great song. And the interesting thing is, it was, written in the context of, I think she had a tough childhood. So it's written she certainly was brought up without a father. And so it was written in the context of kind of low income, not very privileged Black experience. But when you think about it, a lot of white people in America could relate to it too. They come from dysfunctional, families with problems, and they don't have, and so I kind of read that into it as, some kind of,
his universal themes.
Yeah. So there was it was a nice little fusion going on there. And it's a great song. It's one of these, there are a few songs where you like them and you go, that's not like any other song. You know what I mean? It's like 99% of songs you hear clearly fit in some genre, and they sound a lot like the other songs. This is one of those songs that's just distinctive.
When I was a kid, like a kid, I don't remember how young. There was a TV playing in the background, black and white maybe, and it was and for some reason this woman was playing, and it was Joan Armatrading.
Yeah.
And my music was, indifferent pop music, maybe Pink Floyd or whatever, and I just listened to her, and it just hit me like it's from Mars. I'd never heard music like that.
Well, she had a very distinctive voice too.
Yeah. I asked ChatGPT to categorize what these people have in common who I like, and it failed. It just gave me a long disjunct. But she has a distinctive voice, and it's a distinctive power to it, and it's just wonderful. It's from we're both evolutionary psych guys in different ways, and as we know, the draw of music is an inevitable fact about life, and it's not at all resolved why we like music.
That's true. What is Steve Pinker's theory? I mean, I guess one theory would be actual, not mating calls quite in the bird sense, but a way of advertising your fitness to the other sex. That's one theory, right? Does Jeff Miller, is that his?
I'm sure. I don't know exactly Jeff's theory, but that's the kind of theory you would have, because Jeff tries to put everything in the line of sexual selection. So he would talk, for instance, about asymmetries between male singers and female singers. I don't know, though, in the modern world, I think men and women sing, roughly just as well and are roughly just as famous for their singing.
Yeah, it seems like they're both into it and good at it.
It could be a virtuoso performance designed to entrance your mate with your intelligence and your skill, your physical skill. What Pinker said, which got him into a lot of trouble, was he says it doesn't have a purpose. It's cheesecake, and
it's a
auditory
spandrel.
cheesecake. It's a spandrel. It's a byproduct of a bunch of other systems. And I think a lot of people were really furious at Steve for the wrong reasons. Like, I don't have a dog in the fight. Maybe he's right. Maybe he's wrong. I've heard different things. But a lot of people were really mad saying, Steve, you're saying music is useless or that music is crap. I love music. But he didn't mean to say that at all. Human rights is spandrel. All sorts of great things are probably spandrels. But the origin of something doesn't say anything about its value. But people really didn't like me using being called auditory cheesecake.
It's funny how sometimes they want something not to be an adaptation and sometimes they want it to be. I guess they want all good things to be natural and all bad things to be not natural.
It's this weird academic cycle. I've seen this with arguments about the female orgasm.
Where, that's what got Don Simons into trouble.
Yeah.
The second chapter of his book, The Evolution of Human Sexuality, was called something like The Female Orgasm Adaptation or Artifact, I think.
So where did he sign on that? What was the ending?
I don't think he came down super clearly on one side, but he definitely gave a lot of airtime to spandrel, not adaptation.
Yeah.
And by the way, I mean, to people who are innocent, adaptation means, it's kind of something that is with us because in the past it did contribute to genetic proliferation. It's in that sense functional, quote, designed by natural selection and so on. And artifacts are things, or spandrels is a common term, that aren't with us for that reason. They're just more like a byproduct of other stuff that is with us for that reason. Anyway, he may have come down side of spandrel / artifact, but he, got him into trouble.
It seemed to get everybody mad. So, one view is it was just an accident. It's because the clitoris is homologous with the penis. And so, the penis evolved to ejaculate. And so the clitoris kind of went along for the ride. And it's a lucky accident for women. But then there's a big school of thought saying, no. If you have orgasms, this is a valuable adaptation. It allows you to maybe the muscle, there's a word here, the muscle fluctuations draw the sperm into the body. Maybe it works for peer bonding, where you have sex with a guy, you have an orgasm with him, you're more attached to him than you otherwise would.
Right.
And
it's unresolved, I think, even as we speak.
It's unresolved. And all I know is that each side not only hates the other side, but thinks the other side is politically odious.
Yeah, it's a pretty contentious area. I've been there.
You've been in the sex wars?
I have been in the sex wars. I mean, my book on EvPsych came out early on. The term EvPsych was just coming into vogue, replacing kind of sociobiology. And I think different from sociobiology and in some ways more sophisticated. But anyway, so I got into some trouble.
So sudden question.
Yeah.
Moral Animal, tremendously influential book on evolutionary theory, and not a textbook, not a sort of science book of any way. This is freewheeling discussion, a lot of science, but a lot of art to it, well written and everything. You have heard, and I have heard, people who say, I got into the field because I read The Moral Animal. And the bigwigs say that. Okay, so your publisher comes up to you and says, Bob, isn't it time for The Moral Animal X years later? And how many years would that be?
Oh, God, 1994. You do the math.
There we go. 30 years later.
Yeah. This year would be a good year, wouldn't it? The 30th anniversary.
What would you change?
What would I change?
Yeah. You're not going to get to just reprint the whole
too
book.
much, probably. I'd be afraid to go back. First of all, it's nice of you to say that about it being influential. Well, that's the thing. I toyed with the idea of doing a 20th anniversary, I think, that just didn't change anything. That's what Dawkins did with the selfish gene, just some footnotes.
Yeah,
Because once you start meddling with text, well, that's quicksand. We talked about quicksand last time, I think, and
we
that's
did.
quicksand. And and plus, there are things you should change, like some of the animal findings on reciprocal altruism are now in question, I think. Like even vampire bats, right? We shouldn't go too deeply in the weeds.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure I said a lot of stuff I'd find embarrassing. I'm inclined to do preaching and weigh in on the moral issues of our time. And so I don't know. Life's too short. I don't know.
Yeah, this could be an interesting adventure to revisit this and talk about what's changed.
Yeah, I don't know that the publisher would be all that eager to. I mean, I don't know. We can save this for overtime,
moral
or even later.
Even more moral.
Even more moral. Yeah. Now you're talking. I'm sorry. I'm warming up to the idea. But look. So anything else on? My last thing about singing is I think some people think that one of the things you would have been advertising to a mate was parasite resistance, right? That's like a big theoretical thing, I think, that animals go to. That's a theory also about, I think, coloration in birds and so on, or am I wrong? I have no idea. See, that's the trouble. That's why I can't do a revised edition. I have not been paying attention to it.
You'd have Google Scholar in front of you. And a team of assistants.
Or just ChatGPT. Just maybe. Are you now that you're a productivity guru, I saw your piece in Small Potatoes, some of the Small Potatoes on Substack.
One of them Small Potatoes franchises.
On three keys to productivity. The premise being that you're so much more productive than the rest of us, of course, that we should seek guidance from you. Fine. But where was I going with this? What are the productivity tips? Wait, I think I was going somewhere else. But it's a great piece. It's got a great chart showing famous writers and how they allocated their work time across the day.
Yeah, chart's not for me. It's from this book, Daily Routines, which I copy. My relationship with copyright, by the way, is free-flowing.
Wait, let me just say, I'm not totally losing it. I remembered where I was going with that. The transition was going to be from ChatGPT was going to be, have you worked AI into your life in a way that makes you more productive? But go ahead and go where you were going.
Well, okay, so I had this thing, and then it got yesterday, to Sunday, got pinged as Substack's most important things. So all of a sudden, got a bump.
I saw it had a lot of likes. A lot of likes. I was envious.
Suddenly shot up. So it talks about working in the morning and weird routines and knowing yourself and so on. The GPT question is interesting. When I started off, I was an enthusiast and I sort of had GPT next to me. And all I do for it now is when I'm done a Substack, I run it through GPT for typos and grammaticality errors. And it's terrible. It's terrible in that it just takes a sentence saying, where the G is capitalized. It repeats the sentence and says, you should capitalize the G like this, and then gives the same sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And 80% of it's like that. 15% of it is taking perfectly good sentences and mangling them. And then 5%, it honestly catches things.
Oh. There is a software called Grammarly, which is apparently selling very well, which is dedicated to tasks like this.
I use Grammarly.
And this word you used, grammaticality, was that the word? How does ChatGPT feel about that word? Have you run that word by it? Is that a word? Grammaticality
is a straight out linguistic word.
Okay.
Linguist.
Okay.
The grammaticality of a sentence.
Yeah. I'll start using that. So you mentioned human rights being a spandrel. Did you not?
Oh, yes, I did.
That would be a great transition to talk about Noah. Is it Noah Yuval Harari? Is that his whole name? So famous Israeli historian, I guess, technically, but kind of, cosmic thinker. who got into some trouble for this, for basically calling human rights a scandal. So I guess you're in that same boat with him. But not only for that wasn't what he got mainly into trouble for.
Yeah.
It was, he basically said human rights, like God and heaven and religion and nations and states, is just a story.
Yeah.
Just a fictional story, whereas like mountains are real. If you cut into a human being, he said, the heart, the lungs, that's real, but you won't find human rights there because that's just a story. I think he got into trouble from some religious people like Ross Douthat.
Yeah.
And then Sean Illing, who used to be at Vox. I think he's now
Sharp
got
guy.
a podcast of his own. Yeah. He's a good guy. He tweeted about that. And he's not doing it from some kind of religious conservative standpoint. He says, this crude subjective objective distinction was appealing in my insufferable new atheist phase. But if your philosophy can't appreciate the difference between intersubjective realities and trivial subjective fictions, it's deeply unserious. So I'm still pondering that. But what's your take on did we settle? Is it Noah Yuval or Yuval? No. Anyway, it's Harari.
Harari, I call him.
Yeah, me too.
So I have a funny relationship with Harari, which is entirely one-sided, and it's me being intensely jealous about how his books have sold.
Yeah, that bothers me too, frankly.
Like
I'd like to have a word
million
with
copies. That amazing. Everybody loves him, and I am fine coming across books that sell much better than mine, because I look at them and I say, I get it. I see it. I see the celebrity, or I see the genius behind it. I don't feel level of resentment. But I never saw Species. I picked it up at a beach. I never got it. And people I respect, like Dan Kahneman, saying best book in the last 100 years.
You mean Sapiens, or which?
The Sapiens, his first book.
That was his first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, but whenever I ask people, like, what's the big idea? I never can get a clear idea of what the big idea is. What is the big idea? You've read it.
It's a reconsideration of the span of all humanity, but it doesn't have a singular idea in that way.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm minding my own business, promoting my own book. I think it was Just Babies.
Uh-huh.
I get this email from my publisher, and it says, busy day, but we're so excited about it. It's CBS this morning. We're going to get you on Fresh Air. I know there's going to be some problems with the schedule and everything. Then you're meeting the mayor for a lunch, just mostly photographed at and then Financial Times, by the way, needs to op-ed from you right away, but they promise front page. We're holding back a little bit. New York Times, there's some trouble. And then I realized, this is not for me. As I could tell, I think that's very clear. This is not for me.
They sent you his schedule?
There's an autocomplete. Apparently, there's somebody whose name begins with PA, and an autocomplete is some publicist. And then for the next 3 days, and I email her, I said, this is not my schedule. Email gets his email schedule. And it's like looking into the life that could have been.
Oh, man. I'd be bitter. I get it now. I get it.
And I realized that my schedules are, interview by Delaware newspaper station, February 14th, February 19th. Some school kids want to talk to you about their science fair.
Yeah. I've been there.
April 6th, bookstore showing, very small. No one will be there.
Yeah.
That's mine. And this guy is at a different level. So this is my background. Not inclined to like him.
Okay. So we'll discount for that.
So two things in his defense, though. This is a TED Talk that was a long time ago. What was it, 2011 or something?
Was it? It really? It just got
it just got up, but it was from a while ago. Maybe not 2011, but it was a while ago. And then the second thing is, he's not like defending genocide and saying there's no human rights, so we can kill whoever we want. Rather, in some ways, making a fairly banal point that a lot of the things that we value and take seriously are cultural inventions, not facts about the universe.
Yeah.
So we take Gaza and Israel and US and their borders very seriously, but it's not like science without people would automatically posit the same things. These are cultural things, and we take them with great weight. All of that he gets right. Where he gets wrong, in my sense, is, and I think to some extent this is just lazy philosophy, lazy indifferent philosophy, is that it seems there's a big difference between talking about Santa Claus and unicorns, which are fictional. We make them up as fictions. If people believe in them, they're suckers or they're children or they're confused. That's on the one hand. The other hand, you have things like money and human rights in Canada. Now, in a sense, these are also created through human work, but they're fictions in the same sense. For instance, just because something was created by people doesn't mean it's not real and true. Baseball was created by people, but 3 strikes and you're out. It's kind of a fact. It's kind of a fact. It's no, you can't touch it, you can't lick it, you can't smell it, but it's a fact that plays a role in people's lives.
But that's a fact in the sense that because it's an agreed upon convention, you actually see it happen. And so too with a currency, it's an agreed upon convention that it's worth something. So you see that people hand it to someone and get food in exchange. I assume he would say that God and heaven are different. People believe they exist, but there's no evidence that they do.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it's true that an actual functioning religion has a lot of ritual and agreed upon conventions and has actual force in people's lives and organizing force in society and so on. That's true.
Yep. So there are definite similarities. But at the same time, if somebody says there's a God who created the universe and answers prayers, it's open for somebody to say, you're wrong. You think there's such a thing. You have socially created such a thing, but no such thing exists.
Yeah.
And you coherently deny it. As you know, some notions of religion don't get to be falsified that way. They're sort of more, credences of how to live and so on. And they're more like money, maybe. But some of the hardcore statements could be proven false. But if somebody said money doesn't exist, it's just stupid.
Money's just a story. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is he's lumping a lot of different stuff together. I mean, for example, he lumps states and nations. He says they're just like human rights and God and heaven. They too are just stories. Well, wait a second. I mean, nations are, first of all, they're geographically coherent, but that's not the main thing because he could still say, well, but the borders are arbitrary. But the fact is, like, if you could do a map of just like information flow, physical information flow, which, by the way, is one of the key defining things of a physical body, an animal's body, which he thinks is real, you would see that there's a coherence that corresponds to the claimed territory of the nation.
That's
Moreover,
right.
that information can take the form of motivating large numbers of soldiers to go somewhere and kill people who live in another nation. I mean, there's all kinds of senses in which nations are real, physical, living things, identifiable. That's really that's different from some of the other things he's talking about.
One way to be real is to play a causal role, to affect people, to make a difference.
Go ahead.
I'm very reluctant to say the United States isn't real. I think if somebody wants to say, well, by real, I mean it's not real in the sense that an atom molecule is, sure. But nobody thinks it is. The United States really is real. Some things aren't real. As best I know, and I know you have your conspiracy theories, but Atlantis isn't real. People think there's an Atlantis, but there's not.
Well, there's some chance that a shot, in addition to coming from the grassy knoll, came from Atlantis, but let's not go there. Okay. We'll say JFK.
Walk around JFK conspiracy.
We'll say yeah. Now, it's true that nations have been famously called imagined communities. The scholar Benedict Anderson called them that. And that does capture something about them, which is, and it's kind of an an psych related thing in the sense that we think of these people in these nations as our brethren or our friends and as having this special status relative to us, even though they are not those things. I mean, our brains were designed to think of kin as special and to think of friends as special, people we're engaged in reciprocally positive relationships with. But, and yet, 3 service members get killed in Jordan that you don't know. They're not your friends. They're not your kin. And yet, a lot of people in America say we must have vengeance, Yes. And it's true that's an interesting. Imagined communities is not a bad name for that harnessing of, mental adaptation, psychological adaptations for a purpose that they weren't really designed for by natural selection. That's all true. But still, he was being a little casual.
He was being a little casual. People are jumping up and down on him. And, I think I take the philosopher's side that his casualness, I think his casualness leads to some sloppy thought where it might lead to sort of a dismissal that just as you know that the Loch Ness monster or unicorns or whatever aren't real, Israel and the United States should be thought of in the same brush. But it's not going to convey many people explain their countries don't exist.
Right.
And it misses the fact that in so many hardcore metaphysical ways, they do exist. They have spatial borders. They have rules. They could have causal forces. The United States could decide to invade Iraq. They have structural systems and parts. Not everything. So in some ways, not the biggest thing in the world, but it's worthwhile people realizing not everything that's real you can touch. And Harari doesn't seem to know this.
I would say it's true that not everything that's real that you can you touch. I mean, I would say in all of these cases, there actually are physical patterns of stuff you can point to, currency flow, it's exchange for goods. In all these cases, there is at a minimum physical information patterns. Information ultimately assumes physical form, but you're right in the sense that you mean not everything.
And even some things that you touch can have higher level factors that make them what they are. So Harari at one point says, you could touch a mountain. A mountain's real. You could feel it, you could smell it, you could taste it, that. But certainly the stuff he's touching is real. The mountain itself.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that too. A mountain is itself a convention.
Right.
It's like
to be
the
different
joke
from
about
a hill.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in England, things they call mountains, we call hills, literally, because they don't have real mountains, And so, yeah, no, I thought about that even a mountain is a convention and it's not clear where the line is between a mountain and a hill. But I think his casualness is the key to his success. I've decided that what he's good at, having failed to get anyone to tell me what the big idea is in Sapiens, and having watched some of his talks, or at least parts of them, I've decided what he's good at is just saying things in a really provocative, arresting way.
Yeah.
They're not original insights. He's not exactly the first person to suggest that maybe human rights are not embedded in nature itself, as some people would say. But the fact that we're talking about him, that's the key to his success. You speak loosely enough so that, it permits you to say things in an arresting and memorable way. And then it has the side benefit of being loose enough to annoy people. And here we are. We just spent 15 minutes talking about him. Is he talking about us? No.
No, certainly
because we're
not.
so precise and logical, Paul.
I'm taking this down. I'm taking this down for future career directions.
Yeah, well, it's too late for me. I bequeath it to you. Do with it as you will.
I don't think he should be canceled for this. I think anybody should be canceled.
No.
But I think instead he should have to go to some sort of
some penance,
metaphysical
Hell. How about hell?
Hell's not bad. Hell's not bad.
Hell.
I was kind of thinking like a DEI training program, except instead of DEI,
or that, or we could have him choose between hell and a DEI training program.
Yes. But so instead of hearing about Kendi and stuff like that, they hear about Quine and Rorty.
Mm-hmm.
And Aristotle, and they could hear the different metaphysical notions, and a little bit of Parfit and some Wiggins. It would do anybody good.
Yeah.
Come out of it a better person.
So I'm on board. Let's email him. Anyway, he says arresting things to get attention.
Just like people say about the JFK assassination.
I don't know. People laugh at me because I've gotten interested in the JFK assassination.
It is the prototypical insane conspiracy theory.
Hey.
I'm just saying
Bob's getting his
fact.
hackles up. Yeah, this you're getting pretty personal here, okay?
But it is. If somebody says, I have a conspiracy theorist I want you to meet, and they come up and they say, Oswald wouldn't. Yeah, that's it.
Well, but elaborate. It's crazy I think Oswald did probably shoot the shots, and maybe all of them. Actually, but not all of them. But anyway,
everything I know from the JFK assassination is from the X-Files.
Yeah,
where apparently the smoking man plays a role, and maybe some aliens, and that movie by Oliver Stone,
JFK,
which I didn't like very much, didn't follow it.
Yeah.
A Simpsons episode.
Yeah.
As well as a general feeling that probably it happened the way people said it did.
Well, I probably shouldn't. If I'm going to talk about this at all, it should probably be after the paywall comes down some minutes from now. I don't know. No, actually, I should do the opposite. Paid subscribers to the Non-Zero newsletter should not be subjected to this weird obsession. I should subject the general public to it, and then after the paywall, there should be this haven where you don't have to hear about the JFK assassination. How's that for a business model?
Pretty good.
Thank you.
But if I could ask a meta JFK question, which is because I know I've heard you on another episode. Admittedly, it was one sort of episode you listened to while trying to go to sleep. But I heard you on another episode.
Phew. You've thrown some barbs my way today, Paul. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is.
Meaner.
What's going wrong in Paul's life right now? Was it the small potatoes thing? Did I set you off?
No, just various life stressors. I got to take it on somebody.
Okay.
But you're doing this thing. You interviewed somebody about the JFK thing, and so why should I, as a citizen of 2024, care that much about it?
Well, also you're Canadian. You're removed from it in a number of ways.
Right.
You're not young enough. You're not old enough to remember it. I am. You don't live in the U.S.
I was born a few months after it.
You weren't living a few miles from D.C. My father had talked to JFK. I don't know how long before the assassination on the phone. It was weird. It was like JFK just called him. My father thinks it was a mistake. Wrong number.
Do you know the guy who shot Abraham Lincoln?
Not personally.
John
Wilkes Booth. Yeah.
So apparently, my ex-wife, one of her direct descendants, John Wilkes Booth came up to the theater and had a horse.
Yeah.
And one of my descendants kindly offered to take the horse and tie him up while Wilkes could run into the building.
Oh man. Talk about guilt.
One separation.
I tell you.
But anyway, yeah. So even assuming I'm American, is this connect? I know it connects with Woody Harrelson, and that's not small potatoes. That's going to matter.
Yeah, I mean, there's two answers. Yeah, I'm not into the. Well, look, there's two answers. One is the story, the stories about why there might have been a conspiracy are like huge things. Like there were these guys in the government trying to get us into a war with Cuba. That's the story. That's like a significant historical question by any reading. If people in the CIA and or the Pentagon had the president killed in hopes of getting us into a war with Cuba. Yeah. That's as we say in journalism, that's a story. But the other thing about it is, it's just a particularly fascinating mystery. I just like mysteries. And this one, there's a ton of shit. There's a ton of documents to appraise, various kinds of evidence. It's just the world's greatest rabbit hole. Now, I have kind of the rabbit hole, I think, has kind of run its course for me. I've reached a couple of firm conclusions, and I don't think it would be easy to find evidence that shed new light in more than a marginal way. So, I think there's almost no chance that there was only one shooter. But I do think the shots, it looks like the shots that we know of that hit Kennedy in the head and so on, could well have come from the book depository. And I don't think I'm going to learn a whole lot more. There's a ton of fascinating stuff on the CIA stuff. There's just a ton of weird shit. There's two bodies of evidence, okay? The bullet and everything, just the shooting itself was a more than one shooter. And then there's all this weird stuff connecting Oswald to the CIA. And that's a whole story in its own right. And all of that, there's a lot of weirdly suggestive stuff there that I won't bore you with. The last thing I'll say is the two aren't the same question. It could be that Oswald, I think it's possible, notwithstanding what I've said about only one shooter, that it's possible that Oswald was the only shooter, but there was a conspiracy. He was kind of pushed toward it by people in the government. That's not impossible. Okay, sorry.
So, Bob, do you think that there's a general force within you that causes you to take conspiratorial theories seriously?
Historically, I'm not a big. It's like I went this long in my life without paying any attention to this. I only fell down the rabbit hole on the whatever the 60th anniversary of the shooting. And you know what did it is, do you know who Paul Graham is?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a very noted Silicon Valley guy, started Y Combinator, and he's known as kind of a sage. Have you ever read his essays? They're very good.
A little bit,
He has these online essays. And he tweeted on the 60th anniversary, I think it should be legitimate. You shouldn't get ridden out of polite society to say you believe the CIA was involved in killing JFK. And then he later tweet showed that he's pretty sure there was some kind of conspiracy. That was actually the first time I had, heard somebody I had reason to take very seriously. He's almost like, considered a paragon of sober judgment. And then that same day, I became aware of this Rob Reiner podcast, which I would not take at face value. It's interesting, but I would say he's not a person of entirely sober judgment. But he did this podcast series on the assassination. So I listened to that, got into it. I'm pretty much out of the rabbit hole. It's fine, really. But, speaking of conspiracies, last time we talked about the lab leak. And I had just seen this tweet by Matt Ridley saying, game over, this new evidence is pretty much proof positive that it was a lab leak. And just the update on that is not everyone agrees. Matt's own co-author doesn't agree. She's the scientist who collaborated with him on a book suggesting that a lab leak was pretty likely, I guess. But apparently, the evidence, I've looked a little more closely, and it whatever you thought the chances were of lab leak, they logically, I think, should rise in response to this evidence. I'm not saying. And it continues to be the case that the stories, as I said last time, not being taken seriously by mainstream media. So this kind of thing gets no coverage, even though. Now, this isn't like JFK. It's not just academic, right?
Yeah.
Because, if this happened, there are, we should take whole new kinds of precautions, like have an international regulatory scheme, for example. And we should do that anyway. So obviously an actual peril. But anyway, it's this another casualty of our tribalized times is that they're just, I guess there have always been categories of stories that the MSM kind of avoided or treated in a particular way, but seems worse.
Yeah, and it's when I wrote my book Psych, I talked about irrational thinking. And a lot of people want to point to conspiratorial thinking as irrational thinking, just by definition.
Mm-hmm.
And I really push back on that. I think conspiracies are things that exist. Sometimes they exist, sometimes they don't exist. And sometimes a conspiratorial thought interpretation is a correct one. And sometimes it's not. So it's not, it's to ask whether it's dumb to think that it's a conspiracy. It's like asking, is it dumb to think whether the Americans were involved? Which is just not smart. It's not dumb. If you, it determines on whether or not you have good evidence for it. So a lot of things that used to be viewed as conspiracies, like the U.S. did illegal military experiments on people, or the U.S. sold guns, illegally sold guns to the Contras, flat out conspiracies everybody believes is now true.
Right.
And then there's some things which people believe are conspiracies, which are almost certainly false, like what happened in Newtown, Connecticut, the mass shootings was an acted out scenario, and nobody was actually killed. A grotesque conspiracy. And then there's a whole lot of stuff in between. Like, so I don't know whether Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. But I don't think it's a matter of, well, if my thoughts were working properly, I'd say no. I'd say it's a tough call.
Yeah.
Conspiracies exist. You could miss them.
They exist. And it's kind of weird that conspiracy theory has become a pejorative term.
Yeah.
Because strictly speaking, it shouldn't be. There are obviously all a conspiracy is something that more than one person is involved in, and the involvement of the involvement of some people is not known. And and by the way, I applied the term to lab leak. I don't mean that there was anything intentional or super nefarious. In fact, what seems to have happened, if it happened, is this originated as a grant proposal involving this American nonprofit in Wuhan, and we didn't get the grant, but they ran with the research, at least in Wuhan. That's the theory, and it was an accidental leak, and the intentions were good as to what the research was going to do. But yeah, it is strange. I mean, and everyone actually has their conspiracy theories. When you think about it.
I think a lot of us have our conspiracies. I've been in academia for a long time. I've been involved in a few conspiracies.
Would you like to share?
I could share them vaguely, where I'm in a room with a lot of powerful people. I'm the least powerful person, but somehow I managed to get myself in. And we all say it'd be really good to get this through. And then we think, well, but if other people know about it, they'll stop us, so we keep it secret. And if other people get to vote about it, they might vote against it, so we arrange to it not get voted. And then we have to do various things, and our hearts are pure. This is a good thing to do. The people we're pushing against are cranks. But they're conspiracies. They're a bunch of people getting together to achieve some end in secrecy and trickery.
Yeah, I want to know more. I want details. I want to know who was denied tenure.
Some other time. I remember very deeply. I remember because I said to my fellow conspirators, I guess it then goes to a vote. And they all laughed at me and they said, there's actually a little known codicil on our thing saying that these things don't have to go to vote, even though they're important. Do you want to waive that? And everybody says, shall we vote on it? And then the person says, no, we're not going to vote on this. This is internally decided.
That's a great phrase. This has been internally decided.
Internally decided.
Now, speaking of things that have been internally decided, I think it's about time for the aforementioned paywall to come down. I was advised by someone not to like use terms like pay and money. That I shouldn't say this is for paid subscribers of the Non-Zero newsletter. I should say premium subscribers or something, or members maybe. Now you're not ready. You still haven't gone paid. Now, as soon as you go paid, then.
So when I go paid, am I able to get access to all of the things that we've done together?
Well, we haven't set them up that way. I mean, look, I'll give you a comp. Okay, you want a comp to my? I can arrange that, but you could put them retroactively in your archives,
Yeah,
but
that's
you
what
would
I'm
have to do that. You would have to do that. You mean when you go paid? Can a paid subscriber to your newsletter go back and listen to all of the overtimes that we've done?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that we could give you the files that you could post on your newsletter. They would appear all date-wise like consecutive. Anyway, we can talk about this. It's not impossible, but I'm not an expert on these things.
So the thing is, I'm torn between two things.
Yeah.
I really like writing small potatoes. It's small. It has like 45,000.
Oh, by the way, the other bad news for you, I learned about the other newsletter. She actually grows potatoes. I mean, you are so dead. She's got God on her side and she grows potatoes and you're going to compete with her? She's a fucking rabbi, man. Give it up.
I do feel
she's a potato growing rabbi, Paul. Come on. Come on.
I do feel that.
Rename your newsletter.
I think we got to go for synergy. I think we got to realize that the whole is so much more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah,
But the problem of going paid for me is that, well, the plus of going paid is I understand it'll get me more money.
Maybe.
And that is not a small inducement. We're renovating our house.
Money is real. Don't listen to Harari. Money is real.
Reading that's right. That's right. If money isn't real, can you give me some of his? Because he makes like 100 million a book or something. So you think he wouldn't want to hold on to it if it's not real. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
It makes money.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of work into Substack, more than I should do, more than I work on anything irresponsibly connected to my academics. But the negative is I don't like writing posts that I only give to us very small, restricted people.
You're right.
People. For me, writing is tough. So I want to give my fruits of my ideas to the whole world.
Okay.
How do you get around that?
We're going to resolve that in overtime, Paul.
Oh my God. Okay.
I'm not giving this advice for free.
Okay. If you can give me like 10 Substack tips to boost your paying.
So if you want to hear the Substack tips that can make you rich, that can make Noah Yuval Harari, if that's the order of his names, envious.
Yeah.
You pony up, become a paid subscriber to the Non-Zero newsletter, then you can set up your special podcast feed that will always have the overtimes. And you'll be super special. Plus, supporting a good cause. Would you agree?
Definitely. We also, before we tease the final, could also discuss Jury Duty, the show you were trying to get
the show into. Jury Duty. We can discuss that in overtime.
And I saw it for a season.
Did you see it? It's good, right? Did you like it?
Very impressed.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I learned about it while I was on jury duty this summer. That's how I learned. Somebody mentioned it, and I finally got around to watching it. Yeah, it's like the closest thing to the Truman Show that real life has brought us, I think. So we'll talk about that. Good reminder, and we'll talk about other stuff. I don't know. I may JFK. Not much, I swear. I'll say for the end. And I don't know if well, maybe we'll get back to your productivity tips, which we discussed a little last time before you'd run this piece. I got the actual piece on small potatoes. One of the many small potatoes newsletters has that piece on
small potatoes too.
Small potatoes too on productivity tips, which got a ton of traffic. Okay, now we head into overtime. Thank you, everybody, and we will see some of you in overtime.